The text came in at exactly 3:47 p.m., just as I was adjusting the smart thermostat for our anniversary party. 23 years of marriage, and Maren still couldn't lie convincingly. Blizzard shut the road. I can't get back from the conference. So sorry, honey. Cancel the party. I stared at my phone, standing in our pristine living room with its gleaming hardwood floors and expensive furniture that Maren had insisted we needed to keep up appearances. Through our bay window, I could see Mrs. Henderson across the street watering her garden under brilliant sunshine. Blizzard. Right. My name is Elias Crowley, and I'm a senior network analyst for a mid-sized tech company in what used to be a thriving industrial city before the factories moved overseas. These days, our neighborhood looks like a movie set for American Dreams Deferred. Perfect lawns hiding imperfect lives, chain restaurants, and strip malls filled with nail salons and check-cashing places. I walked to my home office and pulled up the State Highway Department's live traffic cameras. Route 94. North, where Maren claimed to be stranded, showed clear pavement and light traffic. No snow, no ice, not even a cloud in the sky. 23 years of marriage teaches you things. Like how Maren's voice gets higher when she's nervous, how she over-explains when she's lying, how she's been mentioning her regional manager Nolan Trent's name a lot lately, always with that little laugh that means she thinks I'm too stupid to notice. I checked our joint credit card statements online. The conference hotel charge from 2 nights ago. The Marriott downtown, 12 miles from our house. Her company always books the Hampton Inn for actual business trips because they're cheap. The front door slammed. Our 17-year-old daughter Ruby stomped in, earbuds dangling, her face locked in that perpetual teenage scowl she'd perfected. "Where's Mom?" she asked, not looking up from her phone. "Stranded by a blizzard," I said. Ruby snorted. "It's like 70 degrees outside." Smart kid. Gets it from me. I spent the next hour calling guests to cancel the party, making excuses about Maren's emergency. Meanwhile, I did what I do best. I dug into data. Maren's phone records show dozens of calls to Nolan Trent over the past month. Late-night calls, weekend calls, calls that lasted hours. Her company's travel booking system, which I could access because I'd helped them set up their network security last year, showed no conference scheduled for this weekend. No travel authorization, no expense pre-approval. But here's what really got me. Maren had bought new lingerie last week. I found the Victoria's Secret charge buried between grocery purchases, hoping I wouldn't notice. In 23 years of marriage, she'd never bought lingerie for me. My phone buzzed with a text from my buddy Jake Morrison, who was supposed to come to the party. "Hey man, saw Nolan Trent's BMW at the downtown Marriott when I was picking up lunch. Thought you should know." And there it was. The final piece of a puzzle I'd been pretending not to see for months. I sat in my leather desk chair, looking around at our perfect suburban home with its smart lights and voice-controlled everything, and felt something cold settle in my chest. Not sadness, not even anger yet, just a calculating calm that surprised me. Maren thought I was the same pushover she'd married fresh out of college, the guy who worked overtime so she could have nice things, who never complained when she spent weekends networking with her pharmaceutical sales team, who nodded along when she talked about Nolan's brilliant marketing strategies. She was about to learn that 23 years in IT had taught me a few things about information warfare. I opened my laptop and logged into our social media accounts, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Then I changed my relationship status from married to single across all platforms. My phone started buzzing immediately. Friends, family, neighbors, all wondering what was going on. I let it ring. Then I called our bank and put a freeze on all joint accounts and credit cards, citing suspicious activity. Perfectly legal when you're a joint account holder. Finally, I composed a group text to all the party guests we'd invited, about 40 people from the neighborhood, Maren's work friends, my coworkers, family members. Change of plans. Maren is stuck at the downtown Marriott with her boss Nolan instead of the work conference she told me about. Party's back on. Come see how this plays out. Should be entertaining. I hit send and poured myself a bourbon. My phone exploded with responses. Shocked emojis. OMG, what? Messages. Are you serious? Texts. Ruby appeared in the doorway, staring at her phone. Dad, what the hell? Everyone's asking me if Mom's really cheating. Good question, I said. What do you think? She looked at me for a long moment, and I saw her childhood end right there in our hallway. The conference was supposed to be in Chicago. She left her itinerary on the kitchen counter. Chicago's south of here. Smart kid. So, what happens now? She asked. I took another sip of bourbon and smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Now we wait for your mother to come home and explain how she got trapped in a blizzard at a hotel 12 miles away. Within an hour, cars started pulling into our driveway. Word travels fast in suburbia, especially when it involves scandal. Mrs. Henderson brought a casserole. The Johnsons from down the street showed up with beer. Even my coworker Dave arrived with his wife, claiming they just wanted to make sure I was okay. What they really wanted was front row seats to watch my marriage implode. I didn't disappoint them. At 6:30 p.m., Maren's white Lexus pulled into our driveway. Through the window, I watched her sit in the car for a full minute, staring at all the vehicles, probably trying to figure out why our canceled anniversary party seemed to be happening without her. She walked through the front door looking like she'd dressed for a magazine shoot. Perfect hair, fresh makeup, designer dress I'd never seen before. The kind of outfit you wear to impress someone. The living room went silent. 40 pairs of eyes turned to watch her freeze in the doorway. "Elias," she said, her voice climbing to that higher register. "I thought you canceled." "I did," I interrupted, standing up with my bourbon. "But then I checked the weather reports. Funny thing about blizzards, honey. They usually involve snow." Maren's face cycled through emotions like a broken traffic light. Confusion, fear, anger, back to confusion. She was still holding her overnight bag, the one she'd packed for her conference. "I don't understand," she said, but her voice cracked on the last word. "Really?" I pulled out my phone and opened the weather app. Because according to every meteorologist in the state, it's been sunny and 75 degrees all day. But maybe there's some kind of localized blizzard phenomenon I don't know about. You know, the kind that only affects luxury hotels downtown. Mrs. Henderson gasped. Someone in the back of the room whispered, "Oh my God." Maren's best friend Jen Treadwell pushed through the crowd. Jen worked in HR at Maren's pharmaceutical company, a sharp-faced woman who'd never liked me and made no effort to hide it. "This is ridiculous," Jen said, putting her arm around Maren. "You're humiliating your wife in front of everyone based on what? Paranoid suspicions?" I laughed, and it sounded harsh even to me. "Suspicions? Let me show you something." I walked to my laptop and pulled up the bank website on our big screen TV. Joint account activity for the past week. There's the Marriott charge. There's Victoria's Secret, $200 for lingerie I've never seen. There's dinner at Romano's, that fancy Italian place downtown. Funny thing is, I was working late every night this week, so I know she wasn't eating there with me. Maren had gone pale. "Elias, please." And here's her phone records. I switched screens, showing the call logs I'd pulled from our family plan. 47 calls to Nolan Trent in the past month, some lasting 3 hours, one at 2 a.m. last Tuesday. The room was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. But wait, there's more. I was enjoying this now, feeding off the shocked energy of the crowd. Her company's travel system shows no conference this weekend, no travel authorization, no expense approval, so either Maren's developed the ability to attend imaginary conferences, or she's been lying to me. Jen stepped forward, her face flushed with anger. "You hacked into her company's system? That's illegal." "Actually, it's not. I helped design their security protocols last year. I still have legitimate administrative access." I smiled at her. "But thanks for admitting there's something to hide." Maren finally found her voice. "This is insane. You're destroying our marriage over a misunderstanding." "Am I?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. "Because Jake Morrison saw Nolan's BMW at the Marriott today. Same hotel you charged to our credit card. Same hotel where you've been trapped by this mysterious blizzard." The crowd murmured. I saw phones coming out, people recording video. This was going to be all over social media within the hour. "And here's my favorite part," I continued. I called the Marriott, asked to be connected to Maren Crowley's room. They transferred me. The phone rang 4 times before someone picked up. I played the voicemail I'd recorded on my phone. Nolan Trent's voice, slightly breathless. "Hello?" The room erupted. People gasped, whispered, pointed. Someone said, "Holy shit." Mrs. Henderson clutched her pearls. Maren's face crumpled. "Elias, I can explain." "Can you? Because I'd love to hear how your boss answered your hotel room phone during a business conference that doesn't exist." Jen grabbed Maren's arm. "We're leaving. You don't have to listen to this." "Actually, she does." I held up my phone. "Because I've frozen all our joint accounts and credit cards. Maren's car payment, her credit cards, her gas card, all linked to accounts she can't access right now." Maren stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "You can't do that." "I can, and I did. Joint account holder privileges. Perfectly legal when there's suspicious activity." I took another sip of bourbon. Guess you'll have to ask Nolan to put you up for a while." That's when Maren snapped. "Fine," she screamed. "You want the truth? Yes, I'm having an affair. Yes, I was with Nolan, and you know what? I don't feel sorry about it." The room went silent again. "You want to know why?" Her voice was shaking with rage. "Because you're boring, Elias. You come home, you eat dinner, you watch TV, you go to bed. We haven't had a real conversation in years. We haven't had closeness in months. You're like a roommate who pays half the bills." I felt something cold and sharp twist in my chest, but I kept my voice level. "So you decided to spice things up with your married boss instead of talking to your husband about it." "Nolan understands me. He appreciates me. He makes me feel alive again." "Nolan's using you." I pulled up another screen on my laptop. "His wife Jennifer filed for legal separation last month. Irreconcilable differences. Want to guess when that was? Right around the time your affair started." Maren's mouth fell open. "See, I did some research on your boyfriend. Turns out he's got a pattern. Affairs with subordinates. His last company had to pay a settlement to avoid a harassment lawsuit. But I'm sure you're special, honey. I'm sure he really loves you." Jen was pulling at Maren's arm. "Come on, we're leaving right now." But Maren was staring at me with something like hatred. "You bastard! You planned this whole thing." "I planned to have an anniversary party. You planned to lie to me about where you were spending the weekend. I just decided to see which plan worked out better." She looked around the room at all the faces staring back at her. Neighbors, co-workers, friends, people she'd have to see at the grocery store, at Ruby's school events, at neighborhood barbecues. Her reputation was in ashes, and we both knew it. "I want a divorce," she said. "Good. I've already contacted a lawyer. Papers will be filed Monday morning." I raised my glass. "To new beginnings." Maren grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door, Jen right behind her. "Oh, and Maren?" I called out. She turned back, tears streaming down her face. "Next time you want to fake a weather emergency, maybe check the forecast first." The door slammed behind them. The room stayed quiet for about 10 seconds, then exploded into conversation. Everyone talking at once, phones buzzing, the whole neighborhood gossip network lighting up like Christmas. I finished my bourbon and looked around at the crowd in my living room. These people would be talking about this for years. The night Elias Crowley exposed his cheating wife in front of half the neighborhood, Ruby appeared beside me, looking shell-shocked. "Dad, are you okay?" I put my arm around her. "I will be." But I was lying, because as I stood there accepting condolences and backpats from people who'd be gossiping about me tomorrow, I realized something that scared me. I'd enjoyed every second of it, the planning, the reveal, the public humiliation. I'd enjoyed watching Maren's perfect facade crumble in front of everyone she knew, and that was just the beginning. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Word had spread beyond our little neighborhood party. Videos of Maren's breakdown were already circulating on Facebook. Someone had posted the audio of Nolan answering her hotel room phone to Twitter with the caption, "When your boss picks up your wife's phone?" I made coffee and scrolled through the messages. Most were supportive, friends offering to help, family members expressing shock, co-workers saying they'd always suspected something was off about Maren's business trips, but a few were different. "Dude, that was brutal. Remind me never to cross you." That was from Dave, my co-worker who'd been at the party. "Holy shit, Eli. You destroyed her. Completely savage." From my neighbor, Tom Johnson. "I can't believe you recorded everything. You're like a suburban spy." From my sister, Karen. "They thought I was some kind of hero, the wronged husband who'd gotten perfect revenge. But sitting alone in my kitchen, drinking coffee from a mug that said World's Best Dad, a Father's Day gift from Ruby, I felt something darker settling in my chest. I liked how it felt to have power over someone who'd hurt me. Ruby came downstairs around 10, still in her pajamas, looking like she hadn't slept much. "Have you talked to Mom?" she asked. "No, have you?" She nodded, pouring herself orange juice. "She's staying at Aunt Jen's. She says you've lost your mind. What do you think?" Ruby was quiet for a long moment. "I think she's embarrassed because she got caught. But Dad, what you did last night was pretty intense." "She lied to me for months, Ruby. She was planning to lie to me for who knows how long." "I know, and I'm not saying she didn't deserve it, but..." She looked at me with those serious eyes that reminded me of my own mother. "You seemed like you were enjoying it, like really enjoying it. Smart kid. Too smart." My phone rang, Jen Treadwell's name on the screen. "Answer it," Ruby said. "Put it on speaker." I did. "Elias, you snake." Jen's voice was shaking with rage. Do you have any idea what you've done? I've exposed a liar and a cheater. What have I done that bothers you so much, Jen? Maren's career is ruined. Her boss, her company, everyone's talking about this. HR is launching an investigation into her relationship with Nolan. She could lose her job. That's what happens when you sleep with your married supervisor. It's called consequences. You planned this. You deliberately humiliated her in front of everyone she knows. I felt that cold satisfaction again. I shared information, true information. If Maren feels humiliated, maybe she should have thought about that before she started lying to me. You're sick. This isn't normal behavior, Elias. Normal people don't destroy their spouse's life for revenge. Normal people don't cheat on their spouse with their boss and lie about it for months. There was a long pause. Then Jen's voice, lower and more dangerous. This isn't over. Maren has friends, people who care about her, people who think you went too far. Is that a threat, Jen? It's a promise. You want to play dirty? Fine. But remember, you started this. She hung up. Ruby was staring at me. Dad, what did she mean? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Check your Facebook page. I opened the app and felt my stomach drop. Someone had created a post in our neighborhood Facebook group. It was a long, detailed account of last night's party, but from a very different perspective. According to this version, I was an abusive, controlling husband who'd hacked into my wife's private accounts, violated her privacy, and then orchestrated a public humiliation campaign because I was too insecure to handle her success at work. The post had dozens of comments already. People I'd known for years were calling me unhinged and scary. Someone suggested that Maren should get a restraining order. Another comment called me the kind of man who gives divorced dads a bad name. Dad? Ruby's voice seemed far away. I kept scrolling. More posts were appearing. Screenshots of my social media accounts with analysis of my controlling behavior, a detailed timeline of my stalking of Maren's activities. Someone had even found old photos of us at neighborhood events and was using them to build a narrative about my possessive body language. My phone rang. My boss, Patricia Wells. Elias, we need to talk. Can you come in today? It's Saturday, Pat. I know, but I've received some calls about your situation. There are concerns about your access to sensitive systems, given your recent behavior. I felt the world tilting. What kind of concerns? The kind that require us to have a conversation in person. Can you be here in an hour? After she hung up, I sat staring at my phone. In less than 24 hours, I'd gone from wronged husband to dangerous stalker in the court of public opinion. Ruby was reading over my shoulder. Dad, this is bad. It's all lies. I know, but people are believing it. She showed me her phone. Kids at school are already messaging me, asking if you're really some kind of psycho. That's when I understood what Jen had meant. Maren's friends weren't just going to let this go. They were going to destroy my reputation the same way I'd destroyed hers. But they'd made one mistake. They thought I was the same person I'd been yesterday morning. The pushover husband who worked overtime and kept quiet and let other people control the narrative. I wasn't that person anymore. I opened my laptop and started typing. If they wanted to play information warfare, I'd show them what 23 years in IT really meant. First, I pulled up the phone records again. Not just Maren's calls to Nolan, but Jen's calls to Maren. Dozens of them. Late-night conversations that lasted hours. Weekend calls during work hours that suggested something more than friendship. Then I accessed Jen's LinkedIn profile and cross-referenced it with Maren's company directory. Jen had been promoted to HR manager 6 months ago, right around the time she'd started encouraging Maren's networking activities with management. I dug deeper. Company expense reports, travel authorizations, performance reviews. It took me 3 hours, but I found what I was looking for. Jen had been covering for Maren's fake business trips, authorizing expenses that should have been flagged, and manipulating schedules to give Maren opportunities to meet with Nolan. But more than that, I found something else. Something that changed everything. Jen's own expense reports showed she'd been staying at the same hotels as Maren and Nolan, not just once or twice, but regularly. The same nights, the same locations. I sat back in my chair, pieces clicking into place. This wasn't just about Maren having an affair with Nolan. This was about Jen orchestrating the whole thing. I picked up my phone and started making calls. If Maren's friends wanted to destroy my reputation, they were about to learn that I had ammunition they'd never even imagined. The war was just beginning. By Sunday evening, I'd built a case that would make a prosecutor weep with joy. The problem with people who think they're smarter than everyone else is that they leave digital footprints everywhere. Jen Treadwell had been sloppy. I found email trails showing her coaching Maren on how to hide the affair, text messages between Jen and Nolan discussing managing the situation, hotel reservations that put all three of them in the same location on nights when Maren was supposedly at home with me. But the smoking gun was Jen's company credit card records. She'd been paying for Nolan's hotel rooms, for dinners, for flowers delivered to Maren's office. She'd been funding the entire affair while using her HR position to cover their tracks. The question was why. I found the answer in Jen's personnel file, which I accessed through a back door I'd built into their system during the security upgrade. Technically illegal, but I was past caring about technicalities. 2 years ago, Jen had filed a complaint against me with my company. She claimed I'd made inappropriate comments during a work dinner when our companies were collaborating on a project. The complaint was investigated and dismissed because it was complete bullshit, but it had cost me a promotion. Jen Treadwell had been planning this for 2 years. She'd gotten close to Maren, encouraged her dissatisfaction with our marriage, introduced her to Nolan, and then facilitated the affair. All to destroy my life as revenge for a perceived slight that existed only in her twisted mind. I was printing out evidence when Ruby knocked on my office door. "Dad, there are people here to see you." I looked out the window, 2 cars in my driveway. I recognized Tom and Sarah Johnson from down the street and Mike Chen from the neighborhood association. The others I knew by sight, but not name. "What do they want?" "They say they need to talk to you about Mom. They seem upset." I saved my files and went downstairs. 6 people were standing in my living room, looking like a suburban lynch mob. Tom Johnson stepped forward. He was a big guy, worked construction, always struck me as decent enough, but his face was hard now. "Elias, we need to talk." "About what?" "About what you did to Maren. About this whole sick revenge thing you've got going." Sarah Johnson crossed her arms. "We've been friends with you both for years. What you did Friday night was cruel and unusual. What I did was tell the truth." "You humiliated her in front of the entire neighborhood," said Mike Chen. "You destroyed her reputation, her career, her relationship with her daughter, over what? An affair?" I felt that cold anger rising again. Over lies, over months of being treated like an idiot while my wife screwed her boss. "So you decided to ruin her life?" "I decided to stop being a victim." Tom stepped closer. "Well, now you're being a bully, and we don't tolerate bullies in this neighborhood." "Is that a threat, Tom?" "It's a warning. Back off. Stop this revenge campaign. Let Maren rebuild her life." I looked around the room at these people I'd known for years. People who'd attended my barbecues, borrowed my tools, asked for my help with their computer problems. Where were you all when Maren was lying to me? When she was stealing money from our joint accounts to fund her affair? When she was making me look like a fool to everyone who knew us? "That's between you and her," Sarah said. "It's not our business." "But my response is your business?" "When you turn it into a public spectacle, yes." I smiled, and I could see it made them uncomfortable. "You want to know what's really interesting? How quickly you all turned on me. Friday night, you were patting my back and telling me how sorry you were. Today, you're here threatening me. What changed?" No one answered. "I'll tell you what changed. Someone got to you. Someone convinced you that I'm the villain here. Someone who's very good at manipulating people's opinions." I pulled out my phone. "Someone like Jen Treadwell." Tom's face flushed. "This isn't about Jen. This is about you acting like a psychopath." "Really? Because I have phone records showing Jen called each of you yesterday. Long conversations. Want to guess what you talked about?" The room went quiet. "Here's what I think happened," I continued. "Jen called you all and painted me as some kind of dangerous stalker. She told you I was obsessed, controlling, probably violent. She made you afraid of what I might do next. And like good neighbors, you decided to come over here and put me in my line." Mike Chen shifted uncomfortably. "Elias, maybe you should talk to someone, a therapist, or maybe you should see this." I opened my laptop and showed them the evidence I'd compiled. The hotel records, the expense reports, the email trails. I watched their faces change as they realized the scope of what had been happening. "Jen Treadwell has been orchestrating this affair for months," I said. "She's been using company money to fund it. She's been manipulating HR policies to cover for them. And she's been planning to destroy my reputation from the beginning." Sarah Johnson stared at the screen. This can't be right." "It's all documented, time-stamped, verifiable." I closed the laptop. "So before you come into my house and threaten me, maybe ask yourselves who's really manipulating who here." Tom was backing toward the door. We didn't know." "No, you didn't, because you believed what you wanted to believe, that I was the bad guy, that Maren was the victim, that this was all about my fragile male ego instead of a coordinated campaign to destroy my life. They filed out without another word, leaving me alone with Ruby. "Dad," she said quietly, "what are you going to do with all that evidence?" I looked at my daughter, 17 years old, smart as hell, and watching her father transform into someone she didn't recognize. "I'm going to end this," I said. "How?" I smiled, and this time I didn't care how it looked. "I'm going to show Jen Treadwell what real revenge looks like." Monday morning, I drove to Maren's office building, a gleaming glass tower downtown that housed Pinnacle Pharmaceuticals. I'd been here before for company parties, always feeling like an outsider among Maren's polished colleagues. Today was different. Today, I belonged here. I took the elevator to the 15th floor and walked into the reception area like I owned the place. The receptionist, a young woman named Ashley who'd always been friendly at company events, looked surprised to see me. "Mr. Crowley, are you here to see Maren? Because I'm here to see David Brennan," I said. David was the company's CEO, a sharp-eyed man in his 50s who'd built Pinnacle from a small regional distributor into a major player. "Do you have an appointment?" "Tell him it's about Jen Treadwell's expense fraud and HR violations. Tell him I have documentation." Ashley's eyes went wide. She picked up her phone. 5 minutes later, I was sitting in David Brennan's corner office, looking out at the city skyline while he reviewed the evidence I'd compiled. "Jesus Christ," he muttered, flipping through printouts. "How long has this been going on?" "At least 6 months that I can document. Probably longer." He looked up at me. "And you're bringing this to me because?" "Because Jen Treadwell has been using your company's resources to facilitate an affair between your employees, then using her HR position to cover it up. She's violated about 15 different corporate policies and probably several laws." "And your wife was involved in this affair?" "My soon-to-be ex-wife. Yes." David leaned back in his chair. "So this is revenge. This is justice. There's a difference." He studied me for a long moment. "What do you want, Elias?" "I want Jen Treadwell fired. I want a full investigation into her activities. And I want it made clear that this goes beyond a simple affair. This was systematic fraud and abuse of corporate resources. And if I don't?" I pulled out my phone and showed him a screenshot. "Then I send this evidence to the State Pharmaceutical Licensing Board, the Better Business Bureau, and every industry publication that covers corporate ethics. Your company will be synonymous with corruption and harassment within a week." David's jaw tightened. "That sounds like blackmail." "That sounds like consequences. You can handle this internally and quietly, or you can handle it publicly and messily. Your choice." He was quiet for a long time, reading through the evidence again. Finally, he picked up his phone. "Security? I need you to escort Jen Treadwell from the building, immediately. Her access is revoked effective now." He hung up and looked at me. "Satisfied? It's a start." I left the building feeling lighter than I had in days. But I wasn't done. My next stop was Nolan Trent's house. I'd found his address through public records, a McMansion in an upscale subdivision about 20 minutes from downtown. His wife's BMW was in the driveway along with a moving truck. I rang the doorbell. Jennifer Trent answered, a tired-looking woman in her 40s with short blonde hair and intelligent eyes. She looked at me with recognition. "You're Elias Crowley." "I am, and you're leaving your husband." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Getting right to the point. I like that. I have information you might find useful in your divorce proceedings." She stepped aside to let me in. The house was in chaos. Boxes everywhere, furniture covered in sheets, the detritus of a marriage being dismantled. "Coffee?" she offered. "Please." We sat at her kitchen table while she reviewed the same evidence I'd shown David Brennan. Her face was stone-cold calm, but I could see the anger building behind her eyes. "How long did you know?" I asked. "About the affairs in general? Years. About this specific one? Since it started." She looked up from the papers. "Nolan's not subtle. He thinks he's smarter than everyone else, but he's actually just arrogant." "Why didn't you leave sooner?" "Kids. Money. Pride." She shrugged. "The usual reasons people stay in hopeless marriages. But when I found out about your wife, I decided enough was enough." "What made her different?" Jennifer's smile was sharp. "Because he told her he loved her. He's never said that to any of the others." I felt something twist in my chest. He told Maren he loved her? According to the text messages I found on his phone. Quite romantic, actually. Talking about leaving their spouses, starting fresh, building a life together. She leaned forward. "Did you know he was planning to ask her to move in with him?" "I didn't know, and despite everything, it hurt." I'm sorry, Jennifer said, reading my face. I thought you should know what you were really dealing with. Thank you. She tapped the evidence folder. This is good work. Very thorough. Nolan always underestimated people who weren't in sales or management. Looks like that was a mistake. What will you do with it? Destroy him in court. Take half of everything, get full custody of the kids, and make sure everyone in his professional network knows exactly what kind of man he is. Her smile got sharper. By the time I'm done, he'll be lucky to get a job selling used cars. I left Jennifer Trent's house feeling something I hadn't experienced in months. Satisfaction. Not the cold, calculating satisfaction of revenge, but the warm satisfaction of justice being served. But I still had one more stop to make. I drove to Jen Treadwell's apartment complex, a upscale development on the west side of town. I found her in the parking lot loading boxes into her car. She looked up when she heard my footsteps, and her face went pale. You, she said. Me. I suppose you're here to gloat. Actually, I'm here to ask you a question. She straightened up, trying to look defiant. What? Why me? What did I ever do to you that made you want to destroy my life? For a moment, I thought she wasn't going to answer. Then she laughed, a bitter, broken sound. You really don't remember, do you? Remember what? 3 years ago, the Pinnacle Christmas party. You were drunk, and you cornered me by the bar. I searched my memory. You told me I was wasting my time in HR, that I didn't have the personality for management, that I should stick to filing papers and let the real professionals handle important decisions. The memory came back slowly. I had been drunk, and frustrated because Maren had been ignoring me all night, networking with her colleagues while I stood around feeling invisible. You filed a complaint about that? I filed a complaint because you made me feel like nothing, like I was some secretary who didn't deserve respect. Her voice was shaking now. Do you know how hard I've worked to get where I am? How many men like you I've had to deal with who think they're better than me because they work in tech? I stared at her. So you decided to destroy my marriage. I decided to show you what it felt like to be powerless, to watch someone you care about slip away while you can't do anything to stop it. By manipulating my wife into an affair. By giving your wife what she needed. Attention, appreciation, respect. Jen's eyes were blazing now. Maren was miserable, Elias. She told me how you ignored her, how you treated her like a roommate, how you made her feel invisible in her own marriage. So instead of suggesting marriage counseling, you hooked her up with her married boss. I introduced her to someone who saw her value. What happened after that was their choice. I felt that cold anger again, but this time it was different, cleaner, more focused. You're right about one thing, I said. I was an ass at that party. I was drunk and frustrated, and I took it out on you. That was wrong. She looked surprised. But what you did in response was evil. You didn't just hurt me. You hurt Maren, you hurt Nolan's wife, you hurt our kids. You destroyed multiple families because your feelings got hurt. And the worst part? You convinced yourself you were helping, that you were some kind of feminist hero rescuing Maren from her terrible husband, when really you were just a petty, vindictive person who couldn't let go of a grudge. Jen's face crumpled. I lost my job because of you. You lost your job because you committed fraud and abused your position. I just made sure the right people found out about it. I turned to walk away, then stopped. For what it's worth, Jen, you were right about my marriage. I did take Maren for granted. I did make her feel invisible. If you'd just talked to me about it, hell, if you just told me what an ass I was at that party, I might have tried to fix things. Would you have? I guess we'll never know. I walked back to my car, leaving Jen standing alone in the parking lot with her boxes and her ruined life. As I drove home, I realized something had changed. The cold, calculating anger that had been driving me for days was gone. In its place was something sadder but cleaner. Acceptance. My marriage was over. My wife had chosen another man. My reputation in the neighborhood was shot. But I'd fought back, and I'd won. The question was, what came next? 3 weeks later, I was sitting in my lawyer's office, signing the final divorce papers. Maren sat across from me with her attorney, looking older and more tired than I'd ever seen her. The settlement was straightforward. We'd split assets 50-50, I'd keep the house, she'd take her car and half the retirement accounts. No alimony. Her choice, probably because she didn't want to be tied to me any longer than necessary. Any questions? Asked my lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Voss, who specialized in high-conflict divorces. Just one? I said. What happened to Nolan? Maren's lawyer frowned. That's not relevant to these proceedings. I'm curious. Maren looked up at me for the first time all morning. He's gone. His wife took everything in the divorce. He had to move back in with his parents. And you? What about me? Are you still planning that life together he promised you? Her face flushed. That's none of your business. I'll take that as a no. We signed the papers in silence. 23 years of marriage reduced to legal documents and asset division. When it was over, Maren stood up quickly, like she couldn't wait to get away from me. Maren, I said as she reached the door. She turned back. For what it's worth, I'm sorry it ended this way. She studied my face for a long moment. Are you? Because it seems like you got exactly what you wanted. You destroyed everyone who hurt you. I wanted my wife back. I wanted my marriage back. I wanted the life I thought we had. That life was never real, Elias. We were just going through the motions. Maybe, but it was still my life. She left without another word. I drove home to find Ruby waiting for me in the kitchen. She'd been staying with me since the separation, partly because she was angry at her mother, partly because she was worried about me. How did it go? She asked. It's done. How do you feel? I thought about it. Empty, but not in a bad way, like when you clean out a closet and get rid of all the stuff you've been holding on to for no good reason. Ruby smiled. That's weirdly healthy for you, Dad. I've been talking to Dr. Martinez, the therapist Patricia had recommended. Turns out revenge fantasies are normal, but acting on them is where things get complicated. No kidding. I sat down across from her. Ruby, I need to ask you something. Do you think I'm a bad person? She was quiet for a long time. I think you're a person who got hurt really badly and didn't know how to handle it. I think you did some things that were justified and some things that went too far. Which things went too far? The public humiliation, recording everything, turning it into a show for the neighbors. She looked at me seriously. Mom cheated on you, and that was wrong, but the way you exposed her was cruel. I nodded. Dr. Martinez said something similar. But Dad, I also think Mom and Jen underestimated you. They thought you'd just take it quietly, like you always did. They didn't expect you to fight back. Is that good or bad? It's human. That evening, I was cleaning out my home office when I found something I'd forgotten about, a flash drive containing all the evidence I'd compiled about Jen, Nolan, and Maren's affair. I stared at it for a long time, thinking about all the damage that little device could still do. Jen was unemployed, but not unemployable. Nolan was living with his parents, but he'd eventually rebuild his career. Maren was starting over, probably dating again. I could destroy all of that with a few strategic leaks. Make sure none of them ever recovered from what they'd done. The old me, the angry, calculating me, wanted to do exactly that. Instead, I put the flash drive in my paper shredder and watched it get torn into 1,000 pieces. Some wars end with victory. Others end with exhaustion. This one was ending with something rarer. Wisdom. I was 47 years old, divorced, and living alone in a house that felt too big and too quiet. My reputation in the neighborhood was shot. My daughter was going off to college in the fall. My social circle had imploded. But I was free from lies, free from pretending everything was fine when it wasn't, free from being the guy who worked overtime so his wife could afford nice things while she was sleeping with her boss, free to figure out who Elias Crowley really was when he wasn't trying to be the perfect suburban husband. 6 months later, I sold the house and moved to a smaller place across town. Ruby helped me pack, and we found photo albums from our early years as a family, back when Maren and I were actually happy, when we looked at each other like we were in love, instead of just going through the motions. Do you miss it? Ruby asked, looking at a picture of the three of us at her elementary school graduation. I miss who we used to be, I said, but I don't miss who we became. Do you think you'll get married again? Maybe, someday. If I find someone who actually wants to be married to me instead of just married in general. That's a good distinction. Dr. Martinez taught me that one too. We packed the photo albums away. Some memories are worth keeping, even when the relationships that created them are gone. A year later, I ran into Jen Treadwell at a coffee shop downtown. She was working as a freelance HR consultant, according to her LinkedIn profile, which I'd checked out of curiosity. She looked up from her laptop when I walked in, and our eyes met across the room. For a moment, I thought she might leave. Instead, she waved me over. Elias. Jen, how are you? Better? You? She shrugged. Surviving. Building something new. We stood there awkwardly for a moment. I owe you an apology, she said finally. No, you don't. Yes, I do. What I did was wrong. Not just to you, but to Maren and Nolan and their families. I convinced myself I was helping, but really I was just angry. We were all angry. You had a right to be angry. I was just petty. I bought my coffee and sat down across from her. Can I ask you something? Sure. If you could do it over, what would you do differently? She thought about it. I would have minded my own business. Let Maren figure out her own marriage problems without my help. She paused. What about you? I would have talked to Maren before it got to the point where she wanted to cheat. I would have paid attention to what was actually happening in my marriage instead of just assuming everything was fine. Would it have made a difference? Probably not, but at least I would have tried. We talked for another few minutes, carefully, politely, like former enemies meeting under a flag of truce. When I got up to leave, she stopped me. Elias? For what it's worth, I'm glad you fought back. Not the way you did it, but I'm glad you didn't just take it lying down. Thanks, I think. I walked out of the coffee shop feeling lighter than I had in months, not because Jen had apologized, though that helped, but because I'd been able to sit across from someone who'd hurt me and have a civil conversation. Dr. Martinez would be proud. That night, I called Ruby at college. Dad, how are you? Good. Really good, actually. You sound different. I feel different, like I'm finally becoming the person I was supposed to be all along. That's very zen of you, Dad. Your old man's full of surprises. We talked for an hour about her classes, her friends, her plans for the future. She was studying computer science, following in her old man's footsteps, she said, but with a focus on cybersecurity and digital ethics. Someone needs to make sure people like you don't hack into their ex-wife's company records, she teased. Hey, I used legitimate administrative access. Sure you did, Dad. Sure you did. After we hung up, I sat on my back porch with a beer, looking up at the stars. The house was quiet, but it was a good quiet. Peaceful instead of empty. I thought about Maren, probably getting ready for bed in whatever apartment she'd found after our divorce. I hoped she was happy. I really did. Not because I'd forgiven her. Forgiveness was still a work in progress. But because carrying anger was exhausting, and I was tired of being tired. I thought about Nolan, probably still trying to rebuild his career and his reputation. I hoped he'd learned something from the experience, though I doubted it. I thought about Jen, working late in some client's office, trying to build a new life from the ashes of the old one. I hoped she'd found some peace, and I thought about myself, 48 years old, divorced, starting over in a world that felt completely different from the one I'd known a year ago. It was terrifying and exhilarating and lonely and hopeful all at the same time, but it was real. No lies, no pretense, no perfect suburban facade hiding a rotting foundation. Just me figuring out what came next. I finished my beer and went inside. Tomorrow was a new day, and for the first time in years, I had no idea what it would bring. That felt like a gift.